What's up, poopers? Welcome to the second guide in my Black Desert Online series. Now, I said this guide would be about weapons and crafting, but I quickly realized how important it is to understand the worker and housing and node system in this game before you get into crafting. So, let's go ahead and jump right into the very unique worker system in Black Desert Online. First, let's understand the basics of the system and why you want to learn it. So, when you complete certain quests in Black Desert Online, you'll gain contribution points. Contribution points allow you to buy houses for workers and crafting stations, and it allows you to unlock work locations for your workers. You want to have workers doing work for you because some of the items in this game require tons of materials, and you are personally limited by what you can gather based on your work points, which regenerate over time, similar to Arcade's labor point system. So once you've gathered about 8 or so contribution points, you can start utilizing this system, and I recommend you use it as soon as possible rather than waiting until you're level 50 or something. So let's start with workers. Workers can be purchased in any town at any time by going to the worker vendor marked on your map as a pickaxe. Talking to him and looking at a worker will cost you 5 work points. And if the worker he shows you isn't what you're looking for, you can spend 5 more work points to check out another one. Some workers are better at other things than others, and you can sometimes even get rare quality or high quality workers. Now, the first worker you hire in Black Desert will not require a house, but any subsequent workers will require housing. So let's learn about the housing system. In any city in Black Desert Online, if you select it on the main map, it'll reveal all available houses for you to purchase in that city. Buying a house requires a bit of silver and 1 or more contribution points. When you spend a contribution point, it is not gone. You can get it back at any time by selling a house or whatever you invested it into, but you'll lose the silver you invested as well. So there are 4 types of houses in Black Desert Online. There are warehouses, worker houses, crafting stations, and personal houses. So let's go over each of them really quickly to learn what they do. Warehouses will increase the size of your storage in that city, and that storage is what all the workers in that city will use to store items they gather for you, or where they will take items from when they need them to craft something. Note that warehouses in Black Desert Online are localized, meaning items in a warehouse in one town are not going to be in the next town. The warehouses will be separate. Next, worker housing. This simply provides a house that allows you to hire additional workers in that city. This is what you'll need if you want to have more than one worker or any workers in a city beyond the first free one you are given. Now thirdly, player housing is a house that you can decorate and place items you craft or gather throughout your travels, and some unique crafting stations will need to be placed in your personal house to be used, such as alchemy stations or cooking stations. Now, if you want to do crafting by yourself, you'll eventually want a house somewhere, and you can have a maximum of 5 houses throughout the Black Desert Online's vast world. Lastly, we can pick crafting stations. Now these are usually unique to the house that you have selected. In this town, only one house can be turned into a shipyard, and only this house can be turned into a wagon building crafting station. So you'll want to carefully plan out what house gets turned into what. You'll also notice little white lines connecting some of the houses. This means that the house has a prerequisite house. You cannot unlock the last house in a chain until you have unlocked the houses before it. Kind of like unlocking tiered housing. Usually in these chains, the further in the chain of houses you get, the better crafting stations or warehouse you can build in that house. Now remember, if you do make a mistake on the way you build your houses, don't worry, you can restructure the houses at any time. You will have your contribution points refunded, but you will lose any silver you put into the house and all of its upgrades. You'll also notice that some types of structures have arrows. This means that they can be upgraded to improve what they do. Upgrading a warehouse increases its storage. Upgrading a worker house will increase the amount of workers you can hire, and upgrading crafting stations will make them able to craft better stuff. So now that you understand housing, you can get some houses for additional workers and go ahead and hire them at the worker guy in the city who's marked with the pickaxe. And now let's understand why the hell you just bought a bunch of houses for a bunch of random dudes. Now these workers can basically be our gathering and crafting bros while we're out adventuring. But to send them to gather, we'll need to learn how nodes work. Nodes in Black Desert Online are unlocked by looking around the world and finding node NPCs that will initially be marked on your minimap as a question mark. Once you talk to them, it will reveal the node on the world map, and you can invest a contribution point into the node and start using it. To send workers to the node, however, you'll also have to invest a contribution point into the workstation you want the worker to use. And to do both of these things, you'll have to be physically at the node with your character. Once you put the contribution points in, you can send your workers there and start gathering whatever material that node is for. The time it takes for your worker to gather, it will be based on that worker's skills and stats. Some workers are slower at gathering, some workers are better at crafting, so it's important to choose which workers do what. However, this will only work if the node you are using is directly connected to the city the worker is in. If you want to use a node further away from the city the workers are in, you will need to connect it by investing contribution points into any nodes in between. So it sort of turns into a contribution kind of mini talent investment mini game sort of thing. But once your workers are gathering, you can order them to repeat it, and you'll slowly fill up your warehouse with whatever materials you want them to gather. Once you get enough of the right materials, you can tell the workers to craft something in one of the crafting houses. Now remember, they'll be using the warehouse to store and take materials, not your inventory. And you can see your worker status by opening the world map at any time, and you can view the storage of your cities in each warehouse by selecting the city from the world map as well. So you can keep track of your workers from anywhere in the world while you're out busy saving helpless maidens and stuff like that. Now as your workers do more work, they'll gain experience, level up, and they'll eventually be allowed to take an exam that will upgrade them. You can only send one to an exam at a time, and it takes about 24 hours for them to complete the exam, and during that time the worker is unusable. But you can use cash shop items to finish the exam instantly. The last thing you'll want to know is that these workers will need to be fed beer eventually. Each task uses their energy, and beer refills that energy. So let's quickly go over how to craft beer for the workers in this video. To craft beer, you'll first need a personal house. Then head to any innkeeper or cook vendor in one of the bigger cities to buy a crafting station that looks like this one here. For this example, I'll be doing it in the third city you'll visit in Black Desert Online, as this is probably where you'll start your workers out. Once you buy the crafting station, you can place it in your house, and you'll only need to gather the materials to craft the beer. Now, all of the materials but one can be bought from the same vendor that sold you the crafting station. Each beer will need 6 water, 1 sugar, 2 yeast, and the materials you'll need to gather yourself will be either 5 potatoes or 5 grain, which you can tell your workers to do if you're too lazy to gather it yourself, or you're busy, you're saving fair maidens all over the world. Or you can manually grab it yourself by equipping a sickle or I think it's a hoe, and then heading to a farm like this one here. You can purchase a sickle or a hoe from any major city tool vendor, such like this. They are usually marked on the map with a sickle actually. They'll also sell tools to pretty much do any gathering you want, but that'll use labor points, and I'll go more into that in the next video. So once you've gathered your 5 potatoes or 5 wheat, you can head to your personal house, then place the crafting station down in your house like this. And once the cooking station is placed in your house, you can just put the materials in, and voila! You should have your beer for your workers. You can also get a lot of beer just by questing, but you'll eventually run out and have to make it yourself. Plus, this levels your cooking skill a bit, which ain't that bad. And that's it! Now you know how to utilize and upkeep your workers, make houses, and map out nodes. Now I'll put a link in the description that lists all available nodes, locations, and what resources they give. And with this information in mind, we can now learn about gearing, enchanting, and socketing, and a bit more in-depth crafting for the next video. Until then, I am booping out. Boop.